The Diary of a CEO. Very interesting podcast with John Lennox. Talked about so much and never talked about what really matters. The real point. Too busy trying to be nice than to be right. Putting a man who does not know the Lord on the same platform as a man who does. The two do not relate. And to tell a man, oh, I still have time. Tomorrow is not promised. And you may die in your ignorance and in your rejection. In addition to that, know what you know before you know what you don't. First, you've got to learn 1 + 1 is 2. Before you complain that you don't understand calculus or algebra 2. I'm agnostic, as if that's a good thing. A man that is warm rather than hot or cold. A man that doesn't know can't say he's sitting on the fence he doesn't know. Well, if you don't know, find out. Seek and you shall find. Ask. Knock. You are how you were raised. Raise up a child in the way he should go. When he gets old, will not depart. A better way to read that scripture in reverse is, you will go the way you were raised. You are your father's son. Hence is why conversion is necessary for the racists in the South who grew up calling black folks the N-word just because their skin was dark. That didn't have anything to do with any crime. It was because of the disposition of who they were in the founding of the country. Slaves who didn't get paid. Why, you're less than me. I'm superior than you because your skin is dark. So you are an N-word. The child was raised that way. His grandfather talked that way. His father talked that way. His mother talked that way. Raise up a child in the way he should go. When he gets older, he will not depart. The seeds of origin. And most of you would blame God. God didn't do it. He allowed it. You don't like people to be the boss of you. God knows that. You weren't a robot. He simply programmed to walk to the left and right. And that was it. He was a loving, compassionate creator, father. Children, don't eat that. Children, do this. Okay, mother. Okay, father. Is that you when you were converted? Have you come to God and been more a headache and a frustration? Do you have more questions than you do obedience to the little that you do know? The Lord famously said, be faithful in the little things. I'll make you ruler in the larger ones. You struggle with the simplest truth and grasp at a more complicated one, which justifies your ineptitude and incapacity, inability, and unwillingness. And then you spend most of that time saying God's not fair, as if you were more just than God. You're not. You were fair. Your moral compass. What is your moral compass? You claim to have a moral compass? How is that possible? Such in a way that you're in a position to judge even the idea of a creator or a heavenly father? Does that make sense? A child born with an eye worm in its eye. How can there be a God? Because 1 billion more were born without an eye worm. And you didn't say that there was a God then? Did you? You're looking for the anomaly and the exception, when the rule is far more evidentiary of faith and the reason to trust God. Because 99% of the children are born without an eyeworm. There must be a God. Oh no. Grasping at straws, straining at a gnat. Why? Because unlike most, you want to be justified. You know, he says he has a fiancée now. 99% of all of his shows, she was the girlfriend he was living with. And fornication. See, God's rules change. They don't allow him to go to the psychic. They don't allow him to sleep with the woman. They don't allow him to do his own thing. Well, he has rules too, doesn't he? Telling you when to subscribe, encouraging what to buy. He has rules for the people that work for him. YouTube has rules. You trust the algorithms of man and yourself. And you hold God on the witness stand and interrogation. You're willing to move in with a woman you don't know, but you know enough about her to know, I'm going to continue to learn more about her. I'm willing to make a step of faith in relationship, even though I've barely known her. But most of you don't do that for God. You ought to be ashamed of yourselves. But Father has his children. My sheep know my voice, and a stranger's voice they will not hear. The Lord is not one amongst many. He's one amongst none. There's no such thing as foreign religions on the same platform as the God of heaven and earth. He's not competing against your religion. You're not equal. You're not a competitor, and there is no comparison. And your morality and your ethics, your righteousness is wicked. And peace. Peace in Hinduism, peace in Islam, a peaceful religion. Where do you get this from? Have you not read? Do you not know their history? Do you not see what their lands are like and the people that live amongst those lands? They're not happy, except for the extremists that rule over them. Their women are not happy, and they are bent on destroying you. You are an infidel. Conversion, even under the threat of chopping your head off, taxing you into converting. Peaceful religion. They don't give you the right to believe whatever you want in their churches, their mosque. Not in their countries. So they come to yours since you've opened the door for them. And when they go into nations that have churches, they tear them down. They tear down the Christian churches. They blow them up. They replace them and make them become mosques. They did that in Africa, which was majority Christian, until the Muslims showed up. Peaceful religion. What fools you are. Hinduism? Karma? You ever seen the poverty on the streets of India and why it exists? Because they're working out their karma. We don't want to interfere with the homeless, the hurting. They're getting what they deserve. And why, if I help them, I'm going to make it worse for them. Peaceful religion. You haven't been trained probably as a child, which is why you are so gullible and apt to be converted to a lie. Because your parents didn't give you a guard rail. They left God out of the equation, which made you vulnerable to everyone that wants to attack and lead you down the rabbit hole of hell. Because your parents should have taken stock in your spirituality. But they themselves did not care, which is why you are who you are. Don't blame God. It's how you were raised. To God be the glory.
I've watched an interview with John Lennox, who is a renowned Oxford mathematician, a professor of mathematics, very wise, rational, reasonable, logical man, who also is a God-fearing man. He identifies as a Christian, but he is the sincere kind of Christian, not the religious church kind who's a fake Christian. John is a real Christian. And he was being interviewed by the young man who does the show on YouTube, Diary of a CEO, where he interviews all kinds of big, important people from all areas of life. And he was interviewing him about AI and God and all kinds of things. And it was very fascinating to watch John, who is a very rational, reasonable man, talk to this guy, the young guy, who identifies as an agnostic, which means that he does not know. He's nor an atheist, nor a believer. He's somewhere in between, doesn't know which is which and what is what. And he claimed that he was a believer and became an atheist at 18, following this new atheism movement with Richard Dawkins and the likes of him. And John made such compelling, simple arguments that logically and rationally prove the existence of God, just talking about the brain. And it was so interesting to me, the young guy, obviously he was not convinced. Nevertheless, we had a good discussion, very intelligent, no emotion, just logical. And we brought up all kinds of questions and subjects about the grace of God and the judgment of God and hell and for how does it work. And I recommend you watch it because it is a very interesting interview. Nevertheless, John Lennox, 82 years old, a very wise man. What I picked up a lot, actually, but some of it is the fact that revelation comes in stages, and we already know that, but you don't have to know everything in order to be a follower. And in fact, you're not going to know everything. You're not going to. That's impossible. And that's not required. See, John is a Christian. He doesn't understand the Jewish roots per se. He doesn't understand much about Yeshua being Jewish and that Yeshua was not a Christian and that his name is Yeshua rather than Jesus and he wasn't forming a new religion. He doesn't get much of that based on what I've reckoned watching him, but he gets enough that he's a sincere follower. He understands the love of God, the grace of God, the righteousness, and he understands that it is about following and doing and being rather than just fairy tale believing some ethereal thing that has no real bearing to it. And the guy doing the interview said he had some people before, some evangelics and apologists, etc. But, the average person cannot make this kind of discernment. But not everybody who say they believe actually know the Lord. See, most who say they believe do not know the Lord. But John does, because he has the Spirit of God over him. He has peace and joy. And he's very comfortable in his own skin. He said that he always tries to refute whatever he believes, and he puts himself in situations to be vulnerable, to seek truth. You should never be afraid of seeking out the truth. See, many Christians don't like questions. We don't like being boggled with questions because they're not comfortable and confident in what they believe. And, well, the right question could shatter and shake their entire foundation of faith because their faith is rooted in the wrong thing. See, John's faith is not rooted in any specific point of academia. His faith is rooted in a relationship and the spiritual experience of the love of God. And he says, I don't understand everything. I don't know why this happened. I don't know that. But the question is, do we trust God with it? When we see all of these bad things and we see this going on and that, do we give it to God and we trust Him that He is fair and just and will make it right and compensate? And that's the question. We're not going to understand it all. Now, surely I've learned a lot from John and I know things that John does not know. And you listening to this podcast know things I don't know, and I know things that you don't know. Knowledge works that way. Everybody you meet knows something you don't, and you know something they don't. It's just the way it is. And revelation comes in stages. Maybe one day John will realize even more about what Yeshua really came to do and what is the faith. He calls it Christianity. It's not. But it's fine for where he's at because his heart is still pure. So even though he's not right on target, he's right on target. One of the questions that the guy asked him was about people being born already in some geographical location. Well, statistically, 90% of people just stay in the religion. So he goes, well, are they doomed? Did God knowingly doom them because He knew they're going to born in Afghanistan and they're going to be a Muslim and they're not going to be able to know Christ? And, all kind of questions like that, which are legitimate questions for people who do not know the Lord. It's good to ask questions if you're truly seeking to know, not for the offense. And from what I could tell, the guy was not offensive. He truly wanted to know. See, most of the questions we get are for people attacking, asking insincere questions, like when I talked about the girls who were not allowed to sing with men and all that kind of mess. You meet people, they ask questions insincerely. They don't want the answer, they just want to attack you and accuse you. Well, if this is that, then why is that? But if you truly want to know the answer, then the answer shall be there. And John told him, well, if you want to know, it's not enough that you want to know. If you ask, make sure that you want to do. And if you want to do, then you shall know. If you have a true sincere desire to follow, the Lord will reveal Himself to you. Not if you just want to know, but have no desire to do. So John told him regarding this question, well, I don't know, but I trust God with it. That He's going to make it right. And I could have helped him with that because there's one verse in the Bible, Exodus 33, when the Lord talks to Moshe and he lays it out so plainly and He says, I will give grace to whomever I give grace and show mercy to whomever I show mercy. Basically, the Lord saying, I reserve the right to do whatever I want. This is the rule, as in the only way to heaven is through Yeshua, yes. Nevertheless, the Lord will show mercy to whomever He shows mercy. And that's the whole point of the millennial, which is kind of like the middle ground. Many people who have never heard the gospel shall be resurrected because, as Paul said in Romans 1 and 2, they have the Torah of the heart, the natural law. People who naturally do what Torah requires without even having the Torah. They're not going to hell just because they haven't accepted Yeshua. They never even heard of Him. They don't understand all of that. But they know to do what's right. So they're going to be resurrected and learn about Yeshua. Because truly, He is the only way to heaven. But there's all kind of backup plans that the Lord has built into the system. And not everybody is aware of it, and you don't really need to be. You do whatever you know and be a witness, like the blind man said. Most of us would discredit the blind man because he doesn't preach well, he doesn't understand the gospel, he doesn't know much of theology, he's never been to a seminary, he doesn't have a doctorate. He said, I don't know if he's a sinner or he's not a sinner. I don't know about any of these things. All I know is I was blind and now I see, and he's the one that healed me. See, and most of us need to go back to that. I don't know the answer to all these fancy questions of yours. I don't understand any of these things. All I know is once I was lost, now I'm found. Once I was struggling with this, and that, now I have peace. The Lord brought me out of it. He gave me the strength to resist it. He changed my heart. He changed the way I see myself, the way I see life, the way I handle stress, anxiety, and in all kind of situations. He changed my whole life. He came in and swept me off my feet. He took me out of the miry clay and set me up on a rock to stay. The testimony of the relationship. Anyone can do that. You don't need to know theology or even the Bible. We watched another guy talk about his testimony the other day, who had a near-death experience, some rock star, Tim something, I don't remember. Very similar in that regard. He was on his way to hell and had a change of heart. Didn't understand any of that fancy theologian, apologetic, all of that stuff, which nothing wrong with it if you do understand it. Well, that is knowledge that we should increase in. But that's not the merit for salvation. That's not the foundation. The foundation is the love of God, a relationship with God. And that's how people should come to the Lord. As a child. Come as a child. Children are not into all of that stuff. They just want to love and giggle and play and laugh and hold hands and have fun. Have a relationship. They want to be with daddy. They're not sitting there wanting to dissect daddy. They just want to be with daddy. It doesn't really matter what you do. They just want to sit with you and be with you. Be in your presence. Have your attention. Yeshua said, you have to come as a child. Intellectually, sure, we can explain God to you, but it doesn't work. People don't come to faith because they understand God intellectually, and that interview is the proof. Intellectually, he did a great job explaining it. Well, surely, would you trust your computer if it was the end result of an unguided, unminded, random process? Of course not. Nobody would trust a computer, but yet you trust your brain, and you say that since there is no God, your brain is the end result of a random, unguided, unminded process you call evolution, and you trust it, and you conduct sciences based on that, and that's a contradiction. Atheism is irrational. It's not a reasonable faith. And yes, atheism is a faith, it's a religion. So logically, all good. The mathematics hold up, but nobody comes to faith like that, because faith is much deeper than that, because we are emotional, spiritual being. We're not robots. AI would accept. AI would say, yes, this mathematical formula is correct. 2 + 2 = 4. The human, not so much. We need the heart. And to know God is of the heart. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. He didn't say, blessed are the highly intellectual who can discern and understand great mysteries of the universe. No, that's not in there. And I talked to somebody some time ago about the Torah, and he said what I always say, that the Torah is for children. Well, yes, it is. We are children. The Torah is very basic. It is for children, teaching you how to behave, how to conduct yourself. It's not complicated. We make it complicated to feel that we are more than we are. Well, the secrets and the codes and the Kabbalah and the Gemara and all that mess. The Torah is real simple. Love God and love your fellow man. It doesn't really get any simpler than that. But most people don't want to love God, and that's the problem. You want to dissect God and understand all of his secrets, but you don't want him. And that's why most will not get it. But that's fine, because God has a plan and he's in control. If you love him, you'll be fine. You might not be the greatest, and you don't have to be. Yeshua said in his Sermon on the Mount, if anyone disobeys the least of these commandments, he will be the least. But here's the good news. he's going to be in the kingdom of heaven. So, most of these Christians, they don't understand much. Gentiles hearing the gospel, they don't know much of anything, but, well, they don't need to be the greatest. You can be the least in the kingdom. At least you're in the kingdom. Many other people who have such phenomenal knowledge and understanding are not even going to make it in. For as the verses continue, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the Pharisees, you're not going to enter the kingdom of heaven. The Pharisees were doing everything on paper, all the commandments, but their heart was not in it. They did it in the wrong spirit. They were not filled with love, doing it for God. They were doing it for their own self-righteousness, and that not good enough. So the Lord has His own way of doing things. He's very real and raw, which is why we ought to worship Him in spirit and truth. The Lord hates hypocrisy, falsehood, facade, pretense. God is spirit. He knows our innermost being. He tests our hearts. He knows who we are on the inside. We don't. We see each other on the outside. We can lie and manipulate one another. We can pretend. Put a smile on your face. Oh, he's such a nice person. No, he's not. He's a serial killer. He's trying to lure you into his basement so he can cut you open. You don't know that. God does. And He judges based on that. And of course the actions that follow. But as Yeshua said, you've heard it said, do not murder. I tell you, don't even contemplate murder. The judgment of God is much more severe. Which is why we all need a salvation atonement. No man can enter by his own merit. No man can be just a good person and I can get into heaven even if I don't believe in God. Well, that's not going to do it. Now, the Lord might have grace, like I said, if you are some great person and for whatever reason, we don't know. We can't answer that question. That's up to God. We have those signs in our stores, right? We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone. Well, the Lord has that also. He reserves the right to give mercy to anyone or give judgment to anyone. He is the judge. He has that right. And we're not going to figure Him out. He's beyond us. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are His ways higher than our ways and His thoughts higher than our thoughts. That's in your Bible. Isaiah 55, 56. So don't worry about it. You just do what's right and walk in righteousness and love God. Hallelujah.